How can you avoid moving scams? Now, moving scams can be hard to spot, and that's because buying a move is a customized process, not a fast food menu. And scammers count on it being a service with which you may not be familiar. But the more you know, the better prepared you can be. Now, as more people use the internet to research moving services, flashy web pages can make bad movers appear trustworthy. But you can avoid being the next victim of a lousy mover by learning the tricks these companies will likely use. So here are a few examples of some common moving scams. The hostage, the bait and switch, the extra delivery charge, the always late delivery, the abandoned. Now let's review each of the common scams and learn more about what they mean and why they fool so many people. Let's start with the hostage. In this one, your scam mover will start by giving you an estimate. Once they have your belongings in their possession though, extra fees begin to appear. The scammer uses a very vague contract that allows them to add additional fees once you can no longer choose to back out. The cost of your move will often double or maybe triple. Now, if you want your furniture back, you're going to have to pay the additional fees. It can also happen to customers who don't properly prepare for their move, but in that case it might not be a scam. The difference is whether or not the company intended to steal from you. So what do good companies do instead? Well, most good companies will want to teach you how to avoid price increases. You'll have a detailed, complete inventory of what you're going to move. If you have extra stops, storage, packing, or any extra services, you will see them listed on your contract so that you know the price you'll pay before you move. And you'll also see potential charges for changes that can occur during a move that would change the cost of your contract. Now, depending on the type of move you choose, for example, a non-binding estimate, your price could change from the original quote. But that shouldn't be a surprise to you, though. A good moving company will explain what a non-binding estimate is and how it works. So look for a company that focuses on customer service and is willing to teach and communicate potential charges that might come during your move. Now, the bait and switch. This is a scammer that will quote you the cost of your move, but before the move occurs, the company will try to arrange a new deal at the last minute. Now, they sold you on a low price, but in the end, the cost or scope of your move ends up being nothing close to what you agreed to. It's a lot like the hostage, but the difference is that this happens before you load. But you feel pressured to accept the new terms because it's so close to the move's time frame. It's not uncommon to have a scam mover call the day before and cancel your move unless you agree to a new contract, leaving you to fall victim to this scam. Now, sometimes this scam happens almost inadvertently because of poor planning on the part of the moving company. But here's what good moving companies do instead. Once they agree to a date with you by contract, they will fulfill it, with very few rare exceptions. If they can't meet it, they'll help work with you to get options, but they won't cancel your move. Now, pricing often changes throughout the year due to demand and availability of moving services. And if your move is likely to happen when a pricing might change, well, you'll know that before you sign. That's because good moving companies communicate and inform you of possibilities, like a trusted advisor. Now, good moving companies might have costs that change last minute as well, but still, the difference is that a good company will have explained these possibilities earlier so that you were aware that they could occur. Now, the main difference between a scammer and a trusted moving company is how much they communicate. From potential challenges that might arise, they intend to provide you good service on anything that might change. Next is the extra delivery charge. This is a scam mover that will find any reason they can to charge you additional fees, things that you didn't discuss initially. As an example, think about a mover that gives you an estimate based on weight. Now, after they have all of your belongings, these local or long-distance movers will then charge you extra, claiming that the weight exceeded the forecasted price. Well, when this happens, you're stuck paying the fees or risk losing belongings. Other charges that they might work in are things like packing items that you didn't show on your estimate, and still they packed it without asking for a change order, and then they charge you more because your goods weren't packed and ready for the move. So here's what good companies will do instead. Now, to start, good companies will typically charge based on weight or time, something easily measured and verified. An estimate built on cubic feet sounds easy enough, but how will you prove what the cubic footage was ultimately? Is it really verifiable? Now, charging on cubic feet is standard in most countries outside the US. Still, here it's as easy as a weight from a public certified scale or a simple timesheet. Now, what's more, reputable movers list all packing on a contract, because if it's not on the contract, the mover won't be packing it unless you agree to it later, typically with a change order. Now, if you're doing the packing, They'll tell you what they need in order to load and ship it all safely. Now, are all of these scams kind of sounding familiar? Well, that's because you can avoid the majority of the scams with good communication with your mover. When you know the moving process and how it works, you spot inconsistencies and potential problem areas that might arise with a mover. Good companies readily provide you this information, while less reputable companies will hide it. For example, if a moving company seems to avoid talking to you or explaining your quote in depth, be wary. The next is the always late delivery, and this is a classic scam. In this variation, the scam mover will come to pack and load your belongings. They'll promise to deliver your belongings on a specific day. But later, they call saying your goods are in the back of a truck behind other people's belongings, and you can't receive your furniture until the others are delivered first, and they won't be able to make their specified delivery date. In a similar variation, a mover might end up with a licensing violation, and then their truck is impounded by the Department of Transportation, while all your valuables are stuck on board until that truck is released. And either of these situations results in your goods being delivered weeks late or not at all. But let's be clear, good movers can have all of this happen too. The difference is what happens next. Did you get a delay claim processed? Did they discuss previously with you that it might happen and what to do about it? Or did they feed you excuses? Are you noticing the pattern in these scams? So here's what good companies do instead. A reputable moving company will give you a delivery spread instead of a firm single date. Now, the reason being, logistics are complicated. Delays can happen. Like an airline that might not arrive on time due to various conditions. Trucks can arrive late for multiple reasons too. So to help you plan, a good moving company will give you a range of dates when the shipment can arrive. If it is still late due to various unforeseen circumstances and can't arrive within that date range, then you receive compensation. This compensation comes in the form of a delay claim, which a good moving company will help you file. Again, a good mover explains all of this before you move and will leave you with a booklet called Your Rights and Responsibilities When You Move for more information. Next is the abandon. This scam is the worst of all by a bad mover. Did you know that many moving companies only exist for a few months before disappearing and starting again under a new name? Is that hard to believe? Anyone with a truck and a few dollars can register as a mover though. And they will take your money, load up your belongings, and then close up shop and flee, abandoning your shipment either on a truck or in a private storage facility. Now this scam allows the mover to take off with your money or your belongings or both. If you're lucky enough to find where your belongings ended up, you can expect to pay exorbitant amounts of money to retrieve them. So, how do you avoid traps set by a rogue mover? Well, here's some tips for choosing a mover with the best possible experience. And regardless on whether or not you decide to choose Bailey's Moving and Storage, we want you to have a good moving experience. Call it a pride thing. We hate bad movers, and we don't want you to have to go through the pain of a scam. So first, request an on-site estimate. Because seeing your belongings in person does two things. First, it creates an accurate inventory. Remember the hostage? A complete inventory helps avoid problems, as well as get you the most accurate pricing details. It also allows you to ask as many questions in person to the moving company representative. Remember, good communication is key to avoiding a scam. Now, in COVID times, some companies may not want to come on site, but still, if a company refuses to perform an in-home estimate, or maybe its virtual equivalent, it's usually a red flag. Next, check the company's address because a real mover will have an actual address. Once you get the address, it's worth verifying. Do a Google Map listing or maybe physically drive down and see the facility. Seeing a warehouse with an office and honest people working is a good sign it's not a scam. Next, ask for recommendations from friends, family, or check reviews online because one of the best ways to find a great mover is word of mouth from people who have moved before. Check out reviews online too, because the number of reviews as well as the content written inside them can help you determine a new company from a trusted, reputable company. Also, ask your real estate agent. Real estate agents help people move all the time, and they're an excellent source of referrals for a good mover. Next, we want you to get 3 competitive in-home estimates. Does that sound counterintuitive for a company trying to sell you moving services? Get 3 estimates from 3 different moving companies. If there is a significant disparity, learn why. It will help you identify fraud quickly. Now, you showed the moving company the same belongings each time, so their inventory should be identical. All that should vary is the pricing. Next, choose a mover who bases everything off of weight and time, not cubic feet. Time is more common for local moves, while weight is the standard for long distance. Now again, this is about being verifiable. With time, you can verify that with a timesheet. With weight, a public scale can show you heavy and empty weights. But cubic feet, well, that's almost impossible to measure accurately. Now, our advice as you shop for movers more generally. First, never give a deposit. A mover that demands a deposit up front likely has an agenda other than securely moving your belongings, like taking your money and running. If a mover does require a deposit, maybe move on to a different company. Paying by credit card can also help you avoid problems here too. Next, avoid a move broker. Our recommendation is that move brokers are companies that sell you moving services but pay a different moving company to do the work, and they keep the difference between whatever they charged you and whatever the moving company charged them. But this process creates an incentive to charge you as much as possible, and they hire a cheap moving company, the cheapest one they can find, typically an inexperienced or unreputable company. Companies with associations with van lines, though, are not move brokers. They generally have higher standards than one-off companies. Next, do not pay cash. Paying cash is asking for trouble. When you pay cash, there is no evidence of a transaction. Therefore, if your things aren't moved, or even worse, if they are, and they don't want to give them back to you because they say you didn't pay, well, you have no evidence of ever having paid for your service. Make sure the trucks are branded too. Real moving companies have real moving trucks, complete with branding and logos. And do not sign a partial contract. You'd never sign a loan agreement or binding contract with other sorts of blanks in them. The same rule applies for moving contracts. Make sure that the contract is complete before signing anything, and do not agree to a vague contract. Make sure you sign a complete contract that is typically more than 1 or 2 pages, because the moving company should have listed all of your belongings, all of your packing, and any other services on the contract. Next is buy valuation. You get to choose the level of liability a mover has over your belongings. Now, while this is important on all moves, especially if you're using interstate movers, this will help keep you protected. The longer the distance you're moving, the more likely something can break. Ask about claims policies. Find out more about how the claims process works with the company that you choose, should you need to file one. If you file a claim, you want to make sure the company handles it quickly and correctly. For local move claims, each state has its own regulations, and they vary from state to state. You can find more about claims on interstate moves by referring to the Rights and Responsibilities When You Move document, which is provided by the Federal Motor Carrier and Safety Administration to help protect you when you move. We hope that helps. Good luck on your move.